Please, proceed.
Your Rhineland accent. You must be from Neustadt. During the occupation, you saw French soldiers who looked like me carry guns in your streets. Marry your women. That's what I hear when you speak German.
Charming.
We thrashed you once. Hear those bombs? That's us, thrashing you again.
Now in this scene, we have an officer of the Third Reich doing the racismus, going to the black person and saying, "Oh, how cute. Just because you speak English, you also think you are English." To which the black gentleman responds in perfect German and surprises the Nazi officer, who yet again displays the bigotry of low expectation. But during the conversation, he talks about the Rhine occupation. And what's more interesting, he talks about the fact that his people, and by his people he doesn't mean the English, he means people like him, as in black people, married the women of the Germans. And I found that to be a little bit bizarre, because we're not talking about current year, we're talking about 1920. A time period where racismus was actually the norm, and marrying the enemy was unthinkable. Marrying black people was even more so. So when you have a combination of the two, something just didn't add up. And I wanted to see how many German women actually married black British soldiers at the time. Well, it turns out they weren't British, they were actually French. So when the black gentleman says his people, he actually means the French. Kind of interesting when the Nazi officer said, "Oh, so because you speak English, you're thinking you're English," as in saying that his identity trumps that of nationality, and then the developers make so that the character does indeed believe that his identity trumps that of nationality. But we're not going to go into that. What is really interesting is the occupation of the Rhine. Turns out they didn't marry the women. Turns out they raped and slaughtered them. Now, I want to say this is war. So, this is kind of commonplace because guess what? Unlike Call of Duty, actual war is horrible. It is one of the most evil things that mankind can do to each other. Now, usually when you have a case where one nation does something bad to another nation, you're going to end up with difference of opinion. So, for example, the Germans are going to say that, yes, it happened, it was horrible. And the allies of the French are going to say, no, it didn't happen, it wasn't horrible. However, even the people who are denying it, and there are people, historians, who are saying that the events were exaggerated, they still mention that it happened, but to a smaller scale. So, when you talk in the game that they married the women, alright, there wasn't cases of marriage there. Like, you're probably talking about that smaller scale. And they also mentioned, well, the French did it as well. It's like, yeah, I know the French did it. Everyone was doing it. It was war. War is horrible. So I can understand why that is, but what I don't understand is why are you trying to woke wash it? Why are you trying to do this? Just so you can understand how bad the occupation of the Rhine was, here is something written from within the time period by a British person. So just so you understand, you have a British, which was a member of a nation fighting the Germans in World War I, and he says, "We appeal to the whole civilized world, to all right-thinking and chivalrous men and women, to use every effort in order to end and put an end to the occupation of a European country by colored troops and the unavoidable consequences therein. We appeal to the women of the world to support us in our protest against the utterly unnatural occupation by the colored troops districts along the Rhine." Now, you may say, well, okay, but that's a little bit with racism. Just Google the horror of the Rhine, and you're going to see publication after publication after publication making depictions, writing articles, talking about the horrors that were happening there. And this is being woke washed by the game. Now, the game developers seem to know that this has happened. Like, they're very much aware of what has transpired. Now, if you don't want to talk about this event because you're a progressive and it makes you feel uncomfortable because history, then don't fucking talk about it. Again, it's war, alright? Like, war isn't pretty. It's not supposed to be something to be romanticized. It's actually something horrible. You would have done a justice to the game if you talked about it. But if you don't want to talk about it, then don't talk about it. What is the nonsense like we married your women? It almost made it sound like Germany was a very progressive and forward-thinking place during the 1920s. And that's not the case. I mean, you're making it sound as if when the Nazis came into power, everyone there was multiracial and very progressive like in California. But this is why I dislike diversity in video games. Because when you have a diverse character, they have to treat him with gloves. They have to carry him like he's made out of porcelain. Like, he can't have negative flaws. He can't be human. Because human beings have negative flaws. No, they need to be perfect little angels in a world where everyone is trying to hurt them. That is not for good storytelling, by the way. That is not an interesting story at all. Because yet again, like, it broke my immersion. I had to look it up. It's like, what on earth? Like, burying the German with... What? So, that was one of the things. But the game itself, right? Like, it shoehorns diversity in like a cudgel. So, they're creating this team with one person from every single allied faction. So, you have the black English guy. You got... a woman that's from the Soviet Union, you have an American, you have an Australian, and that is so bizarre. Like, why would anyone create such a weird team of soldiers? And again, like World War II, we're talking about a time period where the United States and the British would segregate troops based on race. And that is a process that happened all the way till Vietnam. Why are they doing this? It's like, you need to see how bad history was so you can appreciate the today. Right? Like, if history was more progressive than today, then it means you should want to be more conservative then. If you want to end racism. Like, the reason progressive developers keep doing this, in my opinion, is to hide just how bad the past was so people don't appreciate the present. Like, they want people to hate the present. They want people to think that we live in the worst time in human history, and only with their help and their knowledge and their storytelling can we actually change society. Unironically, like, they actually said this. I think it was a Ubisoft developer who said that we want to change society with our video games. It's like, how about you just entertain society with your video games? How about that? Why not try that before trying something new? But overall, I mean, the game is very bizarre, story-wise, because it just wouldn't happen, like, making a team that's, like, a representative of each allied faction. Like, what the hell? Are you trying to summon Captain Planet with Mati, Linka, Kwani, and Guy? I don't get why they did that. I suppose the only reason why they did it is to justify, like, why you have such a diverse cast of characters. Because, you know, like, the Soviet woman trope. And yeah, by the way, like, it's true, the Soviets actually used female soldiers, but they were very small compared to the overwhelming number of men. And if the Soviets would actually send, like, one of their best to one of these teams, I guarantee to you, it would have probably not have been a woman. But, hey, you know, it's a video game, and they're not trying, at least this time, to make a realistic story. So, they actually say that they're creating something which takes place alongside the main conflict. So, okay, fine, you know, like, I'm not really that against diversity, but, like, at least make them relatable characters. Like, they should have flaws. They shouldn't be perfect characters that act like perfect angels in a bad situation. And by the way, if you insist on putting female characters in a war game, can you at least make them feel as if they're women? Like, can you give them some, I don't know, some compassion? Like, a perfect example of a good female character placed in a war situation, I think you can find in Iron Harvest. I really liked how they treated the main character there. She actually wanted to rescue her brother, and she really hated the war, like she didn't want to fight in it. But this woman is as bloodthirsty as they come. Like, she really enjoys murdering people and whatnot. Like, even professional soldiers aren't like her. And you get this Hollywoodian trope that's constantly into video games where women are oozing with toxic masculinity. And if you switch them up and you put a male character instead of her, it's literally the same thing. Why not put a woman that actually behaves in a way where I would find it relatable with the other women in my life, like actual human beings that you get to see around you. You don't have to put toxic masculinity into her to make her strong. But that's just my opinion. Anyway, I'll be live streaming this game on my live stream channel. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you in the comment section. Take care.